Good morning. We got a lot of Bible readings to get through today since we're tackling the death of Christ today, since it's Good Friday. So we have a lot to get through. We got 4 different versions of the Bible from 4 different books of the Bible. Did you know that the Bible, that all four books, the 4 Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, talk about the death of Christ, but not all 4 Gospels talk about the birth of Christ. Only Matthew and Luke talk about the birth of Christ. John does touch a little bit base on that, tiny bit, for like a verse or 2, but overall. So today we're gonna be for this video we're gonna be reading from Matthew 21. We're gonna be reading 27. We're going to be reading from Matthew 27, and we're going to go all the way until Matthew 27:56. And yes, I will be reading all the versions, so I'm going to be reading them, trying to read them to you. So we're going to start with the King James Version, and then we're going to go from there. When the skip here. We're going to start at Matthew 27:11 and going from there until we get to the death of Christ. Okay, let's go. Okay, and Jesus stood before the governor, and the governor asked him, saying, "Art thou the king of the Jews?" And Jesus said to him, "Thou sayest." When he was accused of the chief priests and elders, he answered nothing. Then said Pilate unto him, "Hearest thou not many things they witness against thee?" And he answered him to never a word, insomuch that the governor marveled greatly. Now at that feast the governor was wont to release unto the people a prisoner, whom they would, and they had then a notable prisoner, Barabbas. Therefore, when they were gathered together, Pilate said unto them, "Whom will ye that I should release unto you, Barabbas or Jesus, which is called Christ?" For he knew for envy that they had delivered him. When he was set down on the judgment seat, his wife sent unto him, saying, "Have thou nothing to do with that just man? For I have suffered many things this day in a dream because of him." But the chief priests and elders persuaded the multitude that they should ask Barabbas and destroy Jesus. The governor answered and said unto him, "Whether of the twain will ye that I release unto you?" They said, "Barabbas." Pilate saith unto them, "What shall I do with Jesus, which is called Christ?" They all said unto him, "Let him be crucified." And the governor said, "Why, what evil hath he done?" But they cried out more, saying, "Let him be crucified." When Pilate saw that he could prevail nothing, but that rather tumult was made, he took water and washed his hands before the multitude, saying, "I am innocent of the blood of this just person. See ye to it." Then answered all the people and said, "His blood be on us and our children." Then released he Barabbas unto them, and when he had scourged Jesus, he delivered him to be crucified. Then the soldiers of the governor took Jesus into the common hall, gathered unto him the whole band of soldiers, and they stripped him and put on him a scarlet robe, and when they had plaited a crown of thorns, they put it unto his head, and a reed in his right hand. And they bowed the knee before him and mocked him, saying, Hail, King of the Jews! And they spit upon him, and took the reed, and smote him on the head. And after that they had mocked him, they took the robe off of him, and put his own raiment on him, and led him away to crucify him. And as they came out, they found a man, Simon by name. Him they compelled to bear his cross. And we're come unto a place called Golgotha, that is said a place of a skull. They gave him vinegar to drink, minged with gall. When he had tasted there, he would not drink. And they crucified him, and parted his garments, casting lots, that it might be filled, which was spoken by the prophet. They parted my garments among them, and upon my vesture did they cast lots. And sitting down, they watched him there, and set over his head his accusation, written, This is Jesus, King of the Jews. Then where there were two thieves crucified, one on the right hand and the other on the left. And they that passed by reviled, wagging their heads, saying, Thou that destroyest the temple, buildest in 3 days, save thyself. If thou the Son of God, come down from the cross. Likewise, also the chief of priests mocking him. With the scribes and the elders, he saved others, himself he cannot save. If he be the King of Israel, let him now come down from the cross, and we will believe him. He trusted in God, let him deliver him now, if he will save him. For he said, I am the Son of God. The thieves also, which had crucified, cast the same in his teeth. Now from the 6th hour there was darkness over all the land until the 9th hour. And about the 9th hour Jesus cried with a loud voice, Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani. That is to say, my God, why have you forsaken me? Some of them that stood there, they heard that, This man calleth for Elias. And straightway one of them ran and took a sponge and filled it with vinegar and put it on a reed, gave him to drink. The rest said, Let it be. Let us see whether Elias will come to save him. Jesus, when he had cried again with a loud voice, yielded up the ghost. And behold, the veil of the temple was rent twain from the top to the bottom. And the earth did quake, and the rocks rent, and the grave was opened. And many bodies of saints which slept arose, and came out of the graves after his resurrection, and went to the holy city, and appeared unto many. Now when the centurion and they were with him watching Jesus saw the earthquake, those things that were done, they feared greatly, saying, Truly this was the Son of God. And many women were there, beholding afar, which followed Jesus from Galilee, ministering unto him, among which Mary Magdalene and Mary the mother of James, Jose's, and the mother of Zebedee's children. Okay, time to go back. Now, this time we're going to read from This time we are reading from the New International Version, NIV. Let's go. Okay. Meanwhile, Jesus stood before the governor, and the governor asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" "Yes, it is as you say," Jesus replied. When he was accused by the chief priests and the elders, he gave no answer. Then Pilate asked him, "Don't you hear the testimony that they bring against you?" But Jesus made no reply, not even to a single charge, to the great amazement of the governor. Now it was the governor's custom at the feast to release a prisoner chosen by the crowd. At the time, they had a notorious prisoner named called Barabbas. So when the crowd had gathered, Pilate asked them, "Which one do you want me to release to you, Barabbas or Jesus, who's called Christ?" For he knew it was out of envy that they had handed Jesus over to him. While Pilate was sitting on the judge seat, his wife sent him this message: "Do not have anything to do with this innocent man, for I have suffered a great deal today in a dream because of him." But the chief priests and elders persuaded the crowd to ask for Barabbas and to have Jesus executed. "Which of these two do you want me to release to you?" asked the governor. "Barabbas," they answered. "What shall I do with Jesus who's called Christ?" Pilate asked. They all answered, "Crucify him!" "Why, what crime has he committed?" said Pilate. They shouted out louder, "Crucify him!" When Pilate saw that he was getting nowhere, but instead an uproar was starting, he took water and washed his hands in front of the crowd. "I am innocent of this man's blood," he said. "It is your responsibility." All the people answered, "Let his blood be on us and our children." Then he released Barabbas to them, but he had Jesus flogged and handed him over to be crucified. Then the governor's soldiers took Jesus into Praetorium and gathered the whole company of soldiers around him. They stripped him and put a scarlet robe on him, and then twisted together a crown of thorns and set it on his head. They put a staff in his right hand and knelt in front of him and mocked him, "Hail the King of the Jews!" They spit on him, took the staff and struck him on the head again and again. After they had mocked him, they took off the robe and put his own clothes on him. Then they led him away to crucify him. As they were going out, they met a man from Cyrene named Simon, and they forced him to carry the cross. They came to a place called Golgotha, which means place of the skull. There they offered Jesus wine to drink, mixed with gall, but after tasting it, he refused to drink it. When they had crucified him, they divided up his clothes by casting lots, and sitting down, they kept watch over him there. Above his head, they placed a written charge against him: "This is Jesus, the King of the Jews." 2 robbers were crucified with him, one on his right and one on his left. Those who passed by hurled insults at him, shaking their heads, saying, "You are going to destroy the temple and build it in 3 days? Save yourself. Come down from the cross if you are the Son of God." In the same way, the chief priests and the teachers of law and the elders mocked him. He saved others, but he can't save himself. He's the king of Israel. Let him come down now from the cross, and we will believe in him. He trusts in God. Let God rescue him now if he wants him. For he said, I am the Son of God. In the same way, the robbers who were crucified him also heaped insults on him. From the 6th hour until the 9th hour, darkness came over all the land. About the 9th hour, Jesus cried, Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani, which means, my God, why have you forsaken me? When some of those standing there heard this, they said, he's calling for Elijah. Immediately one of them ran and got a sponge, and he filled it with wine vinegar, just put it on a stick and offered it to Jesus to drink. The rest said, no, leave him alone. Let's see if Elijah comes to save him. And when Jesus had cried out again in a loud voice, he gave up his spirit. At the moment, the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. The earth shook and the rock split. The tomb broke open, and the bodies of many holy people who had died were raised to life. They came out of the tombs, and after Jesus' resurrection, they went to the holy city and appeared to many people. When the centurion and those with him who were guarding Jesus saw the earthquake and all that happened, they were terrified and exclaimed, surely he was the Son of God. Many women were there watching from a distance. They had followed Jesus from Galilee to care for his needs. Among them were Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James, Joses, and the mother of Zebedee's sons. Okay, time to go back. Back. Okay. Now we're going to read from the New Living Translation. We are almost done. We have this one, and then we had an NASB, and then we'll be done with this Bible reading. And then there'll be other videos posted for the other ones. Okay. Again, we're starting at Matthew 27:11, and we're going into the death of Christ. So let's go. Now Jesus was standing before Pilate, the Roman governor. Are you the king of the Jews? The governor asked him. Jesus replied, yes, it is as you say. But when the leading priests and other leaders made their accusations against him, Jesus remained silent. Don't you hear there are many charges against you? Pilate demanded, but Jesus said nothing, much to the governor's great surprise. Now it was the governor's custom to release one prisoner to the crowd each year during Passover celebration, anyone they wanted. This year there was a notorious criminal in prison, a man named Barabbas. As the crowds gathered before Pilate's house that morning, he asked them, which one do you want me to release to you, Barabbas or Jesus, who is called the Messiah? He knew very well that the Jewish leaders had arrested Jesus out of envy. Just then, as Pilate was sitting on the judgment seat, his wife sent him a message. Leave that innocent man alone, because I had a terrible nightmare about him last night. Meanwhile, the leading priests and other leaders persuaded crowds to ask for Barabbas to be released, for Jesus to be put to death. So when the governor asked again, which of these two do you want me to release to you? The crowd shouted back the reply, Barabbas! But if I release Barabbas, Pilate asked them, what should I do with Jesus, who's called the Messiah? And they all cried out, crucify him! Why? Pilate demanded. What crime has he committed? But the crowd only roared louder, crucify him! Pilate saw that he wasn't getting anywhere, and that a riot was developing. So he sent for a bowl of water and washed his hands before the crowd, saying, I am innocent of the blood of this man. The responsibility is yours. And all the people yelled back, we will take responsibility for his death, we and our children. So Pilate released Barabbas to them. He ordered Jesus flogged with a lead-tipped whip. And then turned him over to the Roman soldiers to crucify him. Some of the governor's soldiers took Jesus into their headquarters and called out the entire platoon. They stripped him and put on a scarlet robe on him. They made a crown of long, sharp thorns and put it on his head. And they placed a stick in his right hand as a scepter. Then they knelt before him, mockery, yelling, Hail, King of the Jews! And they spit on him and grabbed the stick and beat him on the head with it. When they were finally tired of mocking him, they took off the robe and put his own clothes on him again. Then they led him away to be crucified. As they were on the way, they came across a man named Simon, who was from Cyrene, and they forced him to carry Jesus' cross. Then they went out to a place called Golgotha, which means Skull Hill. The soldiers gave him wine mixed with bitter gall, but when he had tasted it, he refused to drink it. After they had nailed him to the cross, the soldiers gambled for his clothes by throwing dice. Then they sat around and kept guard as he hung there. A signboard was fastened to the cross above Jesus' head, announcing the charge against him. It read, This is Jesus, the King of the Jews. 2 criminals were crucified with him, their crosses on either side of him, and the people raising by shouted abuse, shaking their heads in mockery. So you can destroy the temple and build it in 3 days, can you? Well then, if you're the Son of God, save yourself and come down from the cross. The leading priests, the teachers of religious law, and the other leaders also mocked Jesus. He saved others, they scoffed, but he can't save himself. So he is the King of Israel, is he? Let him come down from the cross, and we will believe him. He trusted God. Let God show him approval by delivering him. For he said, I am the Son of God. And the criminals who were crucified with him also shouted the same insults at him. At noon, darkness fell across the whole land until 3 o'clock. About 3 o'clock, Jesus cried out with a loud voice, Eli, Eli, elama sabachthani, which means, my God, why have you forsaken me? Some of the bystanders misunderstood and thought he was crying out for the prophet Elijah. One of them ran and filled a sponge with the sour wine, holding it up to him at a stick so he could drink. But the rest said, "Leave him alone. Let's see whether Elijah will come and save him." Then Jesus shouted out again, and he gave up his spirit. At that moment, the curtain in the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. The earth shook. Rocks split apart, and tombs opened. The bodies of many godly men and women who had died were raised up from the dead. After Jesus' resurrection, they left the cemetery, went to the holy city of Jerusalem, and appeared to many people. The Roman officer and the other soldiers at the crucifixion were terrified by the earthquake and all that happened. They said, "Truly, this was the Son of God." And many women who had come from Galilee with Jesus to care for him were watching from a distance. Among them were Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James and Joseph, and Zebedee's wife, the mother of James and John. Okay, we got one more to go, and then if you would like to watch, if you want to read along with me in the future, there will be another video posted right after this one. It will be, I'm doing Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, so it'll be Mark's version of the Christ story, the death of Jesus today. And yes, tomorrow I will be reading the burial, and then after the burial on Easter, if you're watching this on YouTube, the Easter story will be posted. The rest of the Easter story will be posted on Easter if you're watching this on YouTube. If you're watching this on Facebook, it's already up. So, anyways, okay, this is the very last of Matthew 27. Again, it's 27:11 until the death of Christ. So let's go. Now Jesus stood before the governor, and the governor questioned him, saying, "Are you the king of the Jews?" And Jesus said to him, "It is as you say." And while he was being accused by the chief priests and elders, he did not answer. Then Pilate said to him, "Do you not hear how many things they testify against you?" And he did not answer him with regard to even a single charge. So the governor was quite amazed. Now at the feast, the governor was accustomed to release for the people any one prisoner they wanted. At the time, they were holding a notorious prisoner called Barabbas. So when the people gathered together, Pilate said to them, "Whom do you want me to release for you, Barabbas or Jesus, who's called Christ?" For he knew that because of the envy, they had handed him over. While he was sitting on the judgment seat, his wife sent him a message saying, "Have nothing to do with that righteous man, for last night I suffered greatly in a dream because of him." But the chief priests and elders persuaded the crowd to ask for Barabbas and to put Jesus to death. But the governor said to them, "Which of the two do you want me to release for you?" And they said, "Barabbas." Pilate said to them, "Then what should I do with Jesus, who's called Christ?" And they all cried, "Crucify him!" And he said, "Why, what evil has he done?" But they kept shouting all the more, saying, "Crucify him!" When Pilate saw that he was accomplishing nothing, but rather that a riot was starting, he took water and washed his hands in front of the crowd. "I am innocent of this man's blood. See to that yourselves." And all the people said, "His blood shall be on us and our children." Then he released Barabbas for them. But after having Jesus scourged, he handed him over to be crucified. Then the soldiers of the governor took Jesus in praetorium and gathered the whole Roman concourt around him. They stripped him and put a scarlet robe on him, and after twisted together a crown of thorns, they put on his head, and a reed he in his right hand, and they knelt before him and mocked him, saying, "Hail the King of the Jews!" They spat on him and took the reed and began to beat him on the head. After they mocked him, they took the scarlet robe off of him and put his own garments back on him and led him away to crucify him. And they were coming out. They found a man of Cyrene, his named Simon, whom they pressed into service to bear his cross. And when they came to a place called Golgotha, which means place of a skull, they gave him wine to drink mixed with gall. After tasting it, he was unwilling to drink. And when they had crucified him, they divided up his garments among themselves by casting lots. And sitting down, they began to keep watch over him there. Above his head, they put a charge against him, which read, "This is Jesus, the King of the Jews." At the time, 2 robbers were crucified, one on the right and one on the left, and those passing by were hurling abuse at him, wagging their heads, and saying, "You who are going to destroy the temple in 3 days, save yourself. If you are the Son of God, come down from the cross." In the same way, chief priests also, among with the scribes and elders, were mocking him. "He saved others, but he cannot save himself. He is the King of Israel. Let him now come down from the cross, and we will believe him. He trusts in God. Let God rescue him, if he delights in him, for he said, 'I am the Son of God.'" The robbers who had been crucified with him also were insulting him the same words. Now for the 6th hour, darkness fell onto the land until the 9th hour. About the 9th hour, Jesus cried out with a loud voice, "Eli, Eli, lama sabachthani." Sabachthani, yeah. That is, my God, why have you forsaken me?" And some of those who were standing there, when they heard this, began saying, "This man is calling for Elijah." Immediately one of them ran, and taking a sponge, filled it with sour wine, and put it on a reed, and gave him a drink. But the rest of them said, "Let us see whether Elijah will come to save him." Jesus cried out a loud voice, and yielded up his spirit. And behold, the veil of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom, and the earth shook. Rocks were split. The tombs were opened. Many bodies of the saints who had fallen asleep were raised. And coming out of the tombs after his resurrection, they entered the holy city and appeared to many. Now the centurion and the others who were with him, keeping guard over Jesus, when they saw the earthquake and the things that were happening, became very frightened and said, "Truly, this is the Son of God." Many women were there looking on from a distance, who had followed Jesus from Galilee while ministering to him. Among them was Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James and Joseph, and the mother of the sons of Zebedee. And that is the end of Matthew 27:11 through 27:15. 56. Um, as you go into Easter this weekend, I just ask that you really think about the story and you really think about what the Lord is telling you, and you just listen to his call. And just like in the Old Testament, I say this blessing to you. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May his face shine upon you. May he be gracious to you and bring you peace. As an add-on, I will also say, may the Lord walk with you and lead you down the narrow path and be with you. Jesus loves you, and I do too. Sparkle on, my beautiful and wonderful sparkles.